The sun was hot in the blue sky over London. Hundreds of tourists walked around Buckingham Palace, taking pictures and looking at the famous royal guards. These guards stood very still in their bright red coats and tall black furry hats. They never smiled. They never moved. They just stood there doing their job. Among the tourists were three young men from America, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus. They were college friends on their first trip to Europe. They had been drinking beer since early morning and were loud and looking for fun. "Look at those guards," Jake said, pointing at a young royal guard standing alone near a metal pole. "They're not allowed to move or talk no matter what happens. I saw it on YouTube." The guard was Private James Wilson. He was only 22 years old, and this was his first month as a royal guard. He was very proud of his job. It was a big honor to protect the royal family and stand guard at the palace. Even though the sun was hot and his uniform was heavy, he stood perfectly still with his face showing no emotion. "I bet we could do anything and he wouldn't move," Tyler said with a laugh. He took out his phone and started recording. "This is going to get so many likes." Marcus nodded and smiled. "I dare you to go stand next to him and make a funny face." Jake walked up to the guard and stood right beside him. He made silly faces and waved his hands in front of the guard's eyes. Private Wilson stared straight ahead, not blinking, not moving. His training was to stay still no matter what, unless there was real danger. More tourists gathered around to watch. Some laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. A few took out their phones to record what was happening. "He's like a statue," Tyler said, walking in circles around the guard. "Hey, I have an idea." He looked at his friends with a mischievous smile. Marcus reached into his backpack and pulled out a long piece of cloth with the British flag on it. He had bought it earlier as a souvenir. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" he asked with a grin. The three friends looked at each other and nodded. They knew what they were about to do was wrong, but they didn't care. They wanted to make a funny video to share online. "You film it," Jake told Tyler, who stepped back with his phone ready. Jake and Marcus moved closer to Private Wilson. Working quickly, they began to wrap the cloth around the guard and the pole behind him. The guard's eyes widened slightly, but following his strict training, he did not move or speak. His hands gripped his rifle tighter as the young men tied him to the pole. "This is so funny," Jake laughed as they finished tying the knot. "He can't even stop us." A middle-aged British woman in the crowd stepped forward. "Stop that right now. You should be ashamed of yourselves," she shouted at them. "Relax, lady. It's just a joke," Marcus replied, not caring about her words. More tourists gathered around. Some were laughing and taking pictures. Others looked angry or worried. A few walked away, shaking their heads. Private Wilson stood at attention, now tied to the pole. His face was turning red from both anger and embarrassment. He had been trained for many situations, but not this one. In his earpiece, he could hear his commander's voice. "Wilson, we see what's happening. Stay calm. Help is coming. 5 minutes." The three American tourists were still laughing and taking selfies with the tied-up guard. They had no idea that their harmless prank was about to bring serious consequences. In the distance, unseen by the crowd, boots began to march in perfect rhythm across the palace grounds. Private Wilson stood very still, tied to the pole. His face did not show his feelings, but inside he was angry. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. The sun beat down on his heavy uniform. Sweat ran down his back. Still, he did not move. "Take a picture with him," Jake said to Marcus. "This is going to be so famous online." Marcus stood next to the tied-up guard and made a silly face. Tyler took photos with his phone. The three friends laughed loudly. "I can't believe he's not doing anything," Tyler said. "These guards are so weird." More people gathered around to watch. The crowd was getting bigger. Some tourists were smiling and taking pictures. Others looked upset. An old British man with gray hair pushed his way to the front of the crowd. "Young men, you need to stop this right now. This is not just some person in a costume. He is a real soldier." "Whatever, old man," Jake replied rudely. "He could move if he wanted to. It's not our fault he's just standing there." The old man's face turned red with anger. "Do you know who you're messing with? These are not just guards. They are members of the Queen's Guard, one of the oldest military units in the world." The three friends ignored him and kept taking pictures. They did not care about the history or the rules. They only cared about getting funny pictures for social media. In the guard station inside the palace grounds, Sergeant Mills was watching the scene on security cameras. He picked up his radio. "Squad B, report to the East Gate immediately. We have a situation with a guard being harassed by tourists." 12 guards who were on break quickly put on their red coats and tall hats. They grabbed their rifles and lined up in perfect order. Sergeant Mills stood in front of them. "Men, one of our own is being disrespected. Private Wilson has been tied to a pole by 3 tourists. We will march there now and handle this situation properly. Remember your training." The guards all nodded. Their faces were serious. No one smiled. They began to march in perfect steps toward the gate. Back at the pole, Private Wilson could hear something in his earpiece. "Wilson, this is Sergeant Mills. Squad is approaching. Hold position for 2 more minutes." Private Wilson felt relief inside, but his face showed nothing. The 3 American tourists were still laughing and taking pictures. They had no idea what was coming. A little girl in the crowd pointed down the street. "Look, Mommy, more guards are coming." Everyone turned to look. In the distance, they could see a line of red coats and black hats. 12 royal guards were marching toward them in perfect steps. Their boots hit the ground at the same time, making a sound like thunder. The crowd began to move back, making space. People whispered to each other. The mood changed quickly from fun to worry. "But guys," Marcus said, nudging his friends, "I think we might be in trouble." Jake looked at the approaching guards. His smile disappeared. "It's fine. They're just coming to change positions or something." But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. The guards were coming straight toward them, and they did not look happy. Tyler started to back away. "Maybe we should go. This doesn't feel right." "Don't be a baby," Jake said, but his voice wasn't confident anymore. "What are they going to do to us? We're just tourists having fun." The marching got louder. The guards were only 50 feet away now, getting closer with each perfect step. Their faces were stone cold. Their eyes were focused straight ahead. Private Wilson could see his fellow guards approaching. For the first time since being tied up, a tiny smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then it was gone, hidden behind his professional mask. The time for jokes was over. The squad had arrived. The squad of 12 royal guards marched in perfect time. Their boots hit the ground together, making a strong, steady beat. The crowd moved back quickly, making a path. Nobody wanted to be in their way. Sergeant Mills led the squad. He was tall with a serious face and 20 years of service. He had seen many tourists do silly things, but tying up a guard was crossing a line. His men followed him in 2 straight rows, their faces showing no emotion. "They're coming right at us," Marcus whispered to his friends. His smile was gone now. Tyler started to walk backward. "Let's just go. This doesn't look good." "Don't be stupid," Jake said, but his voice shook a little. "They're just doing their marching thing. It has nothing to do with us." The squad stopped 10 feet away from Private Wilson. Without a word or signal, they split into 2 groups. 6 guards stood on each side, making a half circle around the tourists and the tied-up guard. Sergeant Mills stepped forward. His face was like stone. He looked at Private Wilson, who was still standing at attention despite being tied to the pole. "Private Wilson, report," he said in a firm, clear voice. "Sir, 3 tourists approached my post and tied me to this pole using a decorative cloth." "Sir," Private Wilson replied, his voice steady. Sergeant Mills nodded once. He pulled out a small knife from his pocket and cut the cloth. Private Wilson was free but stayed at attention. Only then did Sergeant Mills turn to face the three Americans. The crowd was completely silent now. Everyone was watching. "Gentlemen," he said in a cold, official voice, "you have interfered with a member of His Majesty's Royal Guard. This is a criminal offense under British law." Jake tried to laugh, but it sounded nervous. "Come on, man. It was just a joke. We were having fun." "Interfering with a guard on duty is not a joke," Sergeant Mills replied. "The Royal Guards are active duty soldiers protecting the royal family and royal properties." Marcus stepped forward. "We're really sorry. We didn't know it was such a big deal." "Ignorance of the law is not an excuse," Sergeant Mills said. He nodded to four guards who stepped forward. "These men will escort you to the security office where the police are waiting." "The police?" Tyler's face went pale. "We can't go to jail. We're supposed to fly to Paris tomorrow." "You should have thought about that before breaking the law," Sergeant Mills said. "Your actions have consequences." Two guards firmly took hold of Jake's arms. One guard each held Marcus and Tyler. Their grips were strong but not painful. "This is crazy." Jake tried to pull away, but the guards held him tight. "We're American citizens. You can't do this. Your nationality does not place you above British law," Sergeant Mills replied calmly. "The American embassy will be informed, but you will answer for your actions." The crowd watched as the three tourists were led away. Some people took pictures. A few clapped quietly. The remaining guards formed a line behind Private Wilson, who had returned to his position. "Resume your duties, Private," Sergeant Mills said. "Yes, sir," Private Wilson replied, his voice professional. But inside, he felt proud. His fellow guards had come for him. The system had worked. As the three Americans were marched away, they heard whispers from the crowd. "They're going to be in big trouble," a woman said. "I heard they can get up to 3 months in jail for that," a man added. Tyler looked at his friends with fear in his eyes. "My dad is going to kill me if I go to jail in a foreign country." Marcus just shook his head. "This was the stupidest thing we've ever done." Jake said nothing. His face was white. The fun was over. Now they were facing real trouble in a foreign country. The remaining guards stood tall and proud. The crowd slowly moved on. Private Wilson stood at his post again, free and respected. And somewhere in the palace, security cameras had recorded everything. By tomorrow, this would be news around the world. The Royal Guards led Jake, Tyler, and Marcus through a side gate and into a small building on the palace grounds. The sign on the door said Palace Security Office. Inside, 2 police officers in dark blue uniforms were waiting. "We've brought the 3 individuals who interfered with Private Wilson at Post 7, Sergeant Mills told the police officers. The female police officer nodded. "Thank you, Sergeant. We'll take it from here." She turned to look at the 3 Americans. "I'm Officer Bennett from the Metropolitan Police. You 3 are in serious trouble." The guards left, and the police officers sat the 3 friends down at a table. The room was small and plain, with white walls and no windows. "Can we just pay a fine and go?" Jake asked, trying to sound confident. "We have a train to catch tomorrow." Officer Bennett shook her head. "This isn't like getting a parking ticket. You interfered with a military guard on active duty. That's a criminal offense." The male police officer, Officer Clark, took out a notebook. "I need your full names, passport numbers, and where you're staying in London." The 3 friends looked at each other with worry on their faces. This was getting more serious by the minute. "We didn't know it was such a big deal," Marcus said quietly. "In America, we have people dressed up like soldiers in front of some stores. We thought it was like that." "These are not people dressed up as soldiers," Officer Bennett said firmly. "They are actual members of the British Army, with the same legal protections as any soldier. Would you tie up a soldier in your country?" Tyler's face went pale. "No, of course not." "Exactly," Officer Bennett said. Now, Officer Clark will take your statements while I call your embassy. While this was happening, videos of the incident were already spreading across the internet. Tourists who had filmed the whole thing were posting the videos online. Within an hour, millions of people around the world had seen the three Americans tie up the royal guard and then get arrested by the squad. Back at Buckingham Palace, Private Wilson continued his 2-hour shift. He stood tall and proud at his post. Many tourists took pictures of him, but nobody tried to touch him or bother him. In the guard barracks later that evening, the other guards welcomed Wilson with pats on the back and warm smiles. "You handled that well, Wilson," Sergeant Mills told him. "You kept your composure in a difficult situation." "Thank you, sir," Wilson replied. "I wasn't sure what to do when they first started tying me up." "You did exactly the right thing," another guard named Cooper said. "If you had broken position to stop them, they would have gotten the reaction they wanted. By staying professional, you made them look like fools, not you." Wilson smiled. It was his first month as a royal guard, and he had already faced a serious test. He felt proud that he had passed it. Meanwhile, at the police station, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus sat in a holding cell. They had been there for hours. Their phones had been taken away. They felt scared and alone in a foreign country. "A representative from your embassy is on the way," Officer Bennett told them. "But don't expect them to get you out of this. They're just here to make sure you're treated fairly under British law." "What's going to happen to us?" Tyler asked, his voice shaking. "You'll appear before a magistrate tomorrow morning," she explained. "The charges are interfering with military personnel on duty and public misconduct. You could face up to 3 months in jail or a fine of several £1,000s. Maybe both." Jake put his head in his hands. "This is a nightmare. All for a stupid video." "The video is everywhere now," Officer Clark added, "but not the way you planned. People are using it as an example of how not to behave when visiting Britain." The three friends sat in silence. Their fun trip had turned into a disaster. And the worst part was, it was all their own fault. The next morning, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus stood in a small courtroom in London. They wore the same clothes from yesterday, now wrinkled from sleeping in the cell. They looked tired and scared. A judge in black robes sat at a high desk in front of them. "These 3 American citizens are charged with interfering with military personnel on duty and public misconduct," the court clerk announced. The judge looked at them over her glasses. "How do you plead?" A British lawyer stood next to them. He was from the public defender's office and had met them only 30 minutes ago. "My clients plead guilty, Your Honor," he said. "They wish to express their sincere regret for their actions." The judge nodded. "I understand this is your first offense in this country, but that does not excuse your behavior. The Royal Guards are not tourist attractions. They are soldiers doing an important job." Jake stepped forward. "We're very sorry, Your Honor. We made a stupid mistake." The judge looked at some papers on her desk. "I have here a report from the palace. The guard you tied up was Private James Wilson, who had only been on Royal Guard duty for 1 month. Your actions could have damaged his career and reputation." Tyler looked down at his shoes, feeling ashamed. "I also have here," the judge continued, "printouts of your social media accounts where you planned to post the video. One of you wrote, and I quote, 'Going to mess with those guards with the funny hats tomorrow. Will be epic content.' This shows your actions were planned, not a spontaneous mistake." Marcus closed his eyes. They had really messed up. "However," the judge said, "since you have no prior record and have expressed remorse, I will not impose the maximum penalty." The 3 friends looked up hopefully. "Jake Davis, Tyler Rodriguez, and Marcus Chen, I sentence each of you to a fine of £2,000, approximately $2,500 in American currency. You must also write formal letters of apology to Private Wilson and the Royal Guard Regiment." The judge paused, then added, You are also banned from visiting any royal sites in the United Kingdom for 5 years. Your details will be recorded at all entry points. If you attempt to visit, you will be arrested." The three nodded quietly. The fines would take most of their travel money, but at least they weren't going to jail. "One last thing," the judge said firmly. "The videos of your actions have already caused damage to the dignity of our institutions. I order you to post public apologies on the same social media accounts where you plan to share your prank." After the court session, a woman with short blonde hair approached them outside the courthouse. She wore a neat business suit and had a serious expression. "I'm Lisa Morgan from the American Embassy," she said. "I've been sent to make sure you understand the situation and have the means to pay your fines." "My parents wired the money this morning," Jake said quietly. "They're really angry." "As they should be," Ms. Morgan replied. "Do you understand how lucky you are? If that guard had been physically hurt, or if you had previous records, you would be facing months in jail." "We understand," Marcus said. "Your actions reflect poorly on all American tourists," Ms. Morgan continued. "The embassy receives dozens of complaints every week about American visitors being disrespectful, but this incident has made international news." She handed them each a business card. "Once you've paid your fines and written your apologies, come to the embassy. We'll help arrange your return flights." "Return flights?" Tyler asked. "But we have train tickets to Paris tomorrow, and then flights to Barcelona next week." Ms. Morgan shook her head. "Part of your sentence is that you must leave the United Kingdom within 48 hours. Your European tour is over." The three friends stood in silence as Ms. Morgan walked away. Their dream vacation had turned into a nightmare, all because they thought it would be funny to tie up a royal guard for social media likes. That evening, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus sat in their hotel room. They had paid their fines and were now almost out of money. Their suitcases were open on the beds as they packed to go home. "My parents are making me pay them back for the fine," Tyler said with a sigh. "It will take months." Jake nodded. "Same here. My dad said I'm grounded for the whole summer when I get back." Marcus was typing on his laptop. "I just posted my public apology. It feels so embarrassing." "Let me see," Jake said, looking over Marcus's shoulder. The post read, "I want to apologize for my actions at Buckingham Palace yesterday. What my friends and I did to a royal guard was disrespectful and wrong. The royal guards are real soldiers doing an important job. I am truly sorry for my behavior and the disrespect I showed to Private Wilson, the Royal Guard Regiment, and the British people. I have learned a hard lesson about respecting other countries' traditions and people." "I posted mine too," Tyler said. "Already got some nasty comments. People are really mad at us." Jake checked his phone. "My video got over 2 million views, but not the way I wanted. Everyone is calling us stupid Americans and worse." They worked on their formal apology letters to Private Wilson and the Royal Guard Regiment. These letters would go into the official military records. Meanwhile, across London, Private James Wilson sat in the guard barracks common room. His fellow guards were watching a news report about the incident on TV. And the 3 American tourists received fines and were ordered to leave the country. The news reporter said, "This incident has sparked a debate about tourist behavior at royal sites." The TV showed the video of Wilson being tied to the pole, then the squad arriving to free him. Many of the guards in the room had been part of that squad. "You're famous now, Wilson," one guard named Thompson said with a smile. Wilson shook his head. "Not the way I wanted to be famous." "Still, you handled it perfectly," Sergeant Mills said, entering the room. "The captain wants to see you." Wilson followed Sergeant Mills to the captain's office. Captain Roberts was an older man with gray hair and many medals on his uniform. He stood up when Wilson entered. "Private Wilson," the captain said, "your conduct yesterday was exemplary. You maintained your position and dignity in a difficult situation." "Thank you, sir," Wilson replied. "I've received word that the 3 tourists have written formal apologies." The captain continued, "Would you like to read them?" Wilson thought for a moment. "No, thank you, sir. It's enough to know they understand what they did wrong." The captain nodded. "Good man. Now, there's something else." He picked up a paper from his desk. "Because of yesterday's incident, we're updating our training protocols. All new guards will now be taught how to handle similar situations. Your experience will help others." Wilson stood a little taller. Something good had come from the bad situation. "One more thing," the captain said. "A school in London has asked if you would visit and talk to the children about the role of the Royal Guards. The palace thinks it would be good public relations. Would you be willing?" "I would be honored, sir," Wilson replied. As Wilson left the captain's office, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his mother. "So proud of you, James. Your father would have been too." Wilson's father had been a Royal Guard 20 years ago. Wilson smiled. Despite the embarrassing incident, he had made his family proud. Back at the hotel, the three Americans finished their packing. Their flight home was early the next morning. "This trip cost me $3,000, and all I got was a fine and worldwide humiliation," Jake said. "At least we learned something," Marcus replied. "Actions have consequences, especially when those actions are really stupid." They all nodded in agreement. This was a lesson they would never forget. 1 week later, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus were back home in Boston. They sat in Jake's parents' living room, watching TV. None of them felt like going out. People in town had seen the videos online and kept asking them about what happened in London. "My boss saw the video," Tyler said with a sad face. "He gave me extra shifts to help me learn responsibility." Marcus nodded. "My parents made me write an essay about respecting other cultures, like I'm still in school or something." Jake didn't say anything. His parents had been the most angry. They had made him cancel his summer plans and get a job to pay back the money for the fine. The TV show they were watching suddenly ended, and the news came on. The news lady said, "And now an update on the story that went viral last week. 3 American tourists who tied up a royal guard in London have become an example in a new program teaching tourists how to behave at British landmarks." The 3 friends sat up straight. On the screen was Private Wilson, the guard they had tied up. He was wearing his red uniform, but not the tall black hat. He was speaking to a room full of children. "The Royal Guards have a very important job," Wilson was saying to the children. "We protect the king and the royal buildings. When we're on duty, we have to stay very still and not react to distractions." A little girl raised her hand. "Is it true some tourists tied you to a pole?" The camera showed Wilson nodding. "Yes, that happened. It was not a good thing to do. The Royal Guards are real soldiers, not toys or statues for entertainment." Another child asked, "Were you scared when they tied you up?" Wilson smiled a little. "I wasn't scared, but I was worried about doing my job properly. Every Royal Guard wants to do their duty with honor." The news lady came back on screen. "Private Wilson has become something of a celebrity since the incident. The Royal Guard has received thousands of supportive messages from around the world. They are now using this attention to educate the public about the important role of the guards." Marcus turned off the TV. "Well, at least something good came from all this. That guard seems like a nice guy." "Yeah," Jake said quietly. "I feel even worse now. He was just doing his job, and we treated him like a joke." Tyler pulled out his phone. "Guys, look at this. Someone made a video game about it." He showed them a simple phone game where players had to protect royal guards from tourists with bad behavior. "Great," Jake said with a sigh. "We're going to be famous for this forever." Just then, Jake's mother came into the room with some envelopes. "Mail for you boys," she said, not looking very happy. From London, each of them got an envelope with the royal seal on it. They opened the letters nervously. Inside was an official note from Captain Roberts of the Royal Guard. It read, "This letter is to acknowledge receipt of your formal apologies to Private Wilson and the Royal Guard Regiment. Your apologies have been accepted and placed in our records. The incident is now considered closed from a military standpoint. Private Wilson has asked me to add a personal note. He hopes you have learned from this experience and will show proper respect when visiting foreign countries in the future. He bears no personal ill will toward you and wishes you well in your future endeavors. The three friends looked at each other after reading the letters. That's really decent of him, Marcus said. Yeah, Tyler agreed. He could have stayed angry, but he didn't. Jake folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. I'm keeping this forever, to remind me to think before I do stupid things. For the first time since coming home, they felt a little better. The guard they had disrespected had forgiven them. Maybe someday the rest of the world would too. I'm going to write him a personal thank you note, Jake decided. Not because I have to, but because I want to. His friends nodded in agreement. It was a small step toward making things right. 3 months later, Private James Wilson stood in front of Buckingham Palace. It was a cool autumn day, and tourists still took pictures of him. Some people recognized him as that guard from the viral video, but most just saw another royal guard doing his job. Wilson had changed in these 3 months. The incident had made him famous in the royal guard. Younger guards looked up to him. His commanders trusted him more. He had been promoted to lance corporal last month, faster than normal. As he stood at his post, Wilson noticed a young American family approach. The parents were taking pictures while their 2 small children looked at him with big eyes. Remember what we talked about, the father told his children. The royal guards are real soldiers doing an important job. We look but don't touch. The mother smiled at Wilson, though she knew he couldn't respond. We saw your video. Thank you for helping teach people how to respect the guards. Wilson remained still, but inside he felt proud. Something good had come from that difficult day. Across the ocean in Boston, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus were meeting at a coffee shop. They hadn't seen each other much lately. They had been busy with work and school. So guess what came in the mail yesterday? Jake said, pulling out an envelope. What is it? Tyler asked. Jake showed them a letter with an official-looking seal. It's from London. The ban on us visiting royal sites has been reduced from 5 years to 1 year. Good behavior, or something. That's great, Marcus said. Not that I'm planning to go back anytime soon. Me neither, Tyler agreed. But it's nice to know we're not on their blacklist forever. Jake stirred his coffee. I've been thinking about it a lot. We were such idiots. Yeah, Marcus nodded. But at least we owned up to it. My dad said that was the one good thing we did. We admitted we were wrong and took our punishment. Tyler pulled out his phone. Have you guys seen the new anti-harassment signs at the palace? They put them up last month. He showed them a news article with pictures of new signs around Buckingham Palace that said, Royal Guards are active duty soldiers. Touching or interfering with them is a criminal offense. Well, we helped make that happen, Jake said with a half smile. Not the legacy I wanted, but at least it might stop other people from making our mistake. I still can't believe our video has over 20 million views, Marcus said. The comments are still pretty harsh. We deserved it, Jake replied. But check this out. He showed them a classroom educational video about respecting other cultures. The video included a short clip of their incident as an example of what not to do. Great, Tyler groaned. We're going to be teaching material forever. Could be worse, Jake said. At least something useful came from our stupidity. The 3 friends talked for another hour. They had all changed since London. Jake was more thoughtful before acting. Tyler had become interested in learning about different cultures. Marcus was saving money to travel again, but this time with more respect for local customs. As they were leaving the coffee shop, a teenage boy stopped them. Hey, aren't you the guys who tied up that British guard? They looked at each other uncomfortably. Yes, Jake finally said. That was us. It was a really stupid thing to do. I know, the boy said. We watched the video in my social studies class as an example of cultural disrespect. Our teacher made us write papers about it. The three friends didn't know whether to laugh or be embarrassed. What did you learn from it? Marcus asked the boy. The teenager thought for a moment. That just because something might get views online doesn't mean it's right to do it, and that you should respect other countries' traditions. Jake nodded. That's exactly what we learned too. The hard way. As the boy walked away, the three friends looked at each other. Their mistake had been turned into a lesson for others. Maybe that was the best outcome they could have hoped for. 1 year later, Lance Corporal James Wilson stood at attention in a special ceremony at Buckingham Palace. He wore his best uniform with shiny buttons and medals. The autumn sun made his red coat look even brighter. In front of him stood his commander and several important people from the palace. Lance Corporal Wilson, said the commander, for your outstanding service and your work in educating the public about the Royal Guards, you are being promoted to corporal. Wilson stood tall as they pinned the new rank on his uniform. His mother watched from the side, tears in her eyes. His father would have been so proud. In the past year, Wilson had spoken to over 50 school groups. He had helped make a training video for new guards about handling difficult situations. The Wilson incident, as it was now called, had become an important teaching tool. After the ceremony, a palace official approached Wilson. Corporal Wilson, there are some visitors who would like to meet you. Wilson was surprised to see 3 young men waiting nervously by a palace door. He recognized them immediately: Jake, Tyler, and Marcus, the American tourists who had tied him to the pole a year ago. Thank you for agreeing to see us, Jake said, looking uncomfortable. We weren't sure you would. Wilson nodded. Your ban was lifted last week. I was told you requested this meeting. We wanted to apologize in person, Marcus explained. The letters didn't seem enough. And we wanted to thank you, Tyler added. You could have pressed for harder punishment, but you didn't. Wilson looked at the 3 Americans. They seemed different from the loud, careless young men who had tied him up. They stood respectfully, making eye contact but not smiling or joking. What brings you back to London? Wilson asked. We're here for a university program, Jake explained. We're studying international relations. After what happened, we all got interested in understanding different cultures better. Wilson was impressed. They had turned their mistake into something positive. We've been following your career, Marcus said. Congratulations on the promotion today. Wilson raised an eyebrow. How did you know about that? It was in the papers, Tyler said. You're kind of famous now. Wilson smiled a little. So are you, in a different way. They all laughed softly, breaking the tension. Would you like a proper tour of the palace grounds? Wilson offered. The public areas, of course. The 3 Americans looked surprised, but nodded eagerly. As Wilson showed them around, he explained the history and traditions of the Royal Guard. The Americans asked thoughtful questions and listened carefully. The guards have protected the royal family for over 350 years, Wilson explained. Each guard must meet high standards and train for months. We never understood that before, Jake admitted. We just thought you were there for tourists to look at. At the end of the tour, they stopped near the spot where the incident had happened a year ago. It's strange to be back here, Marcus said quietly. Wilson nodded. That day changed all of our lives in unexpected ways. For us, it was a hard lesson, Tyler said, but maybe a needed one. For me, Wilson replied, it became an opportunity. Sometimes good things come from difficult moments. They shook hands before parting ways. No hard feelings remained, just respect and understanding. As Wilson watched the 3 Americans walk away, Sergeant Mills joined him. Those were the tourists, weren't they? Mills asked. The ones who tied you up? Yes, Wilson replied. They've changed a lot. So have you, Mills pointed out. From a new private to a corporal in just over a year, that's quite impressive. Wilson smiled. Life takes strange turns sometimes. Later that evening, Jake, Tyler, and Marcus sat in a London pub, talking about their meeting with Wilson. "He's a good guy," Marcus said. "I'm glad we came." "It feels like we've closed the circle," Jake agreed. "We can finally put this behind us." Tyler raised his glass of soda, to lessons learned the hard way. They clinked their glasses together. One foolish moment had changed the course of their lives. But in the end, they had all grown from it. And that was the most important thing of all.